Alien girl knocked on the human's cabin for help, but her true purpose softened his heart. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to our main character. Jacob Matthews stood at the front of his cabin, looking out over the vast expanse of snow-covered mountains that stretched for miles. He lived a quiet, solitary life, far removed from the bustling city and the noise of human affairs. His cabin, built by his own hands, was nestled deep in the wilderness, far from the nearest road or village. The wind howled outside, and the cold nipped at his skin even through the thick walls. It was the kind of place where one could escape from everything, if only for a little while. But that peace was about to be shattered. As the wind picked up, carrying with it the bitter sting of snowflakes, Jacob heard something faint. A soft knock. His hand paused mid-motion as he was chopping wood, the sound slicing through the air. A knock? In this desolate place? He wiped his brow, squinting through the window. The storm had picked up, the snow thickening by the minute, but the figure at the door was unmistakable. A woman, standing on the threshold, her figure barely visible through the swirling snow. Jacob's heart skipped a beat. Who could it be? He hadn't seen another soul in months. He quickly grabbed his coat and ran to the door, throwing it open with a rush of cold air that sent a shiver down his spine. Standing there, soaked to the bone and barely able to stand, was a girl. She was small, with pale, glowing skin and hair that seemed to shimmer even in the dull light. Her eyes, a striking shade of silver, locked onto his with an intensity that took him by surprise. She was shivering violently, her thin clothes no match for the brutal cold. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. "I need help." Jacob didn't hesitate. Without a second thought, he pulled her inside, away from the biting cold, and wrapped a blanket around her shivering form. He couldn't explain why, but there was something about her, something urgent, that made his heart race. "Who are you?" Jacob asked, his voice firm but gentle as he helped her sit by the fire. She stared at the ground for a long moment, her face a mix of fear and resolve. "My name is Lyra," she finally said, her voice steady despite her obvious exhaustion. I need your help. But there's more to this than you think." Jacob furrowed his brow, his instincts warning him to be cautious. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Lyra took a deep breath, her silver eyes meeting his with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. "I'm not just a traveler," she began, her voice low. "I come from a place far beyond your world, and I'm not just asking for shelter. I need your help for something far bigger than either of us can imagine." Jacob stood frozen, the weight of her words settling on him like the snow outside. She was no ordinary traveler, but something in her eyes, the vulnerability, the silent plea, made him feel like he had no choice but to listen. "I don't know what you're running from," Jacob said, sitting beside her. "But you're safe here, for now." As the storm raged outside, the two of them sat in silence, the crackling fire the only sound in the room. Little did Jacob know, this stranger who had knocked on his door would change his life in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. Her true purpose, what she truly needed him for, was something far beyond his understanding, and it would challenge everything he knew about survival, trust, and what it meant to be human. Jacob watched as Lyra sat by the fire, her small frame shivering despite the warmth of the cabin. The fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about her, but at the same time, there was an undeniable pull, a sense of urgency in her presence. The storm raged outside, but inside the cabin, there was a strange stillness. He had lived alone for so long that the presence of another person, especially one as mysterious as Lyra, felt almost surreal. He broke the silence, his voice steady, but filled with curiosity. "You said you needed help. What kind of help?" Lyra's eyes met his, and for the first time, Jacob saw a flicker of vulnerability in her gaze. She took a deep breath before speaking, her voice soft but resolute. "I'm not from here. I'm not like you. My world is different. It's dying, and I came to find someone who could help us." Jacob frowned, his mind racing to make sense of her words. He had heard rumors of extraterrestrial life, but he never imagined he'd be face to face with someone who claimed to be from another world. "Your world is dying?" he asked, leaning forward. "How can I help? I'm just a simple guy, living out here in the middle of nowhere." Lyra's lips curved into a faint, almost sad smile. "You're more than that, Jacob. Your species, humans, are stronger than you realize. You have something we need. Your heart, your strength, your compassion. You might not understand it yet, but that's why I came here." Jacob shook his head, confused. "What do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about." Lyra hesitated for a moment, then reached into the small bag she had with her and pulled out a device. It was sleek, metallic, and unlike anything Jacob had ever seen. "This is a key," she explained. "It can unlock something that has the power to save my people, but I can't use it alone. I need someone like you. Someone who can see beyond the surface and understand the true value of what's at stake." Jacob took the device from her, his fingers brushing against hers for a brief moment. He looked at it, feeling the weight of it in his hand. "And you think I can help with this?" Lyra nodded. "Yes. You're different, Jacob. I've seen the way you treat others. Your empathy, your willingness to help, even a stranger like me. That's what makes you special. You're the only one who can help us now." Jacob stood up, pacing around the small cabin as he tried to process everything she had just told him. "I don't know what you want from me," he said, his voice filled with doubt. "I'm just a guy trying to survive. I don't have anything that could save an entire planet." Lyra watched him carefully, her silver eyes filled with a mix of sadness and hope. "That's exactly what I need from you. Your willingness to fight for what's right, to do what's needed, even when you don't understand it. That's what will save us." Jacob stopped pacing and turned to face her. "But why me? Why not someone else?" Lyra's gaze softened, and she stood slowly, moving toward him. "Because, Jacob, you have something that others don't. You have the power to change everything." Her words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Jacob felt a strange warmth spread through him, something that was both comforting and unsettling at the same time. For the first time since Lyra had arrived, he felt like he was on the edge of something far bigger than he could ever have imagined. But despite his confusion and doubts, something inside him stirred, something that made him want to believe her, to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could be the one to help save her world. He looked at the device in his hand, then back at Lyra. "I don't know how I can help, but I'll try," he said, his voice quiet but determined. "I don't know what's at stake, but I'm in. You've got my word." Lyra's eyes shone with gratitude as she stepped closer to him. "Thank you, Jacob. You don't know how much this means to me." Jacob nodded, feeling a sense of responsibility wash over him. Whatever this was, whatever it meant, he knew one thing for sure. His life was about to change in ways he couldn't even begin to comprehend. Jacob sat in the small, dimly lit cabin, the weight of the device Lyra had given him still heavy in his hands. He stared at it, his mind racing with questions and uncertainties. What had he gotten himself into? The storm howled outside, but inside the cabin, the fire crackled softly, the only sound breaking the silence. Lyra was sitting by the fire, her eyes fixed on the device as though it held all the answers. Jacob's mind was a whirlwind of confusion. He had agreed to help, but he didn't fully understand what he was getting involved in. He had lived a simple life for so long, isolated and self-sufficient. Now, he was being asked to save an entire world, or so Lyra claimed. His brow furrowed as he stood up, pacing the room. "I don't know how I'm supposed to help you. I'm just a guy with a cabin in the woods. I'm not some kind of hero," he said, his voice tinged with frustration. Lyra's silver eyes followed him as he moved around the room, but she didn't speak. She simply watched him, her gaze steady and unyielding. Finally, Jacob stopped pacing and turned to face her. "What exactly do you need me to do?" Lyra's voice was calm, her tone unwavering as she stood and walked over to him. "It's not about what you can do, Jacob. It's about who you are. You have something that no one else does. Your ability to act without hesitation, your willingness to protect those who need help. That's what will save my people." Jacob shook his head, still struggling to grasp her meaning. "But I'm just one person. How can I possibly make a difference? I'm not equipped for this." Lyra stepped closer, her expression softening. "You've already made a difference just by agreeing to help. My people, they've lost hope. They've been searching for a way to save themselves for so long, but no one has come forward. No one has shown the kind of courage and compassion that you have. Jacob met her gaze, something stirring in him at her words. I don't know what I can do, he said quietly, but I'll try. If it means something to you, I'll try. Lyra smiled, the first real smile he had seen from her since she arrived. It was small but genuine. That's all I ask. Jacob nodded, feeling a strange sense of purpose begin to form inside him. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew he couldn't turn his back on her now. As the night wore on, they sat together by the fire, exchanging stories of their worlds. Jacob told Lyra about his life, his struggles, his quiet existence, and the peace he had found in isolation. In turn, Lyra shared stories of her people, of their advanced technology, and of the devastation that had befallen them. Her world had once been a thriving, peaceful place, but now it was on the brink of collapse. The weight of her words lingered in the air between them, a silent reminder of the gravity of their situation. Jacob had no idea how he was supposed to help her or her people, but as he looked at Lyra, sitting there with hope in her eyes, he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't turn away. He had a chance to make a real difference, and that was worth everything. The fire crackled, and outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside the cabin, a new sense of resolve began to take root in Jacob's heart. Whatever this mission was, whatever came next, he was ready. And somehow, despite the overwhelming uncertainty, he knew he wasn't alone. Jacob sat at the small wooden table, staring at the map spread out before him. The storm outside had finally calmed, leaving a quiet stillness in its wake. Lyra stood near the window, her gaze distant, lost in thought as she watched the last remnants of the snowstorm fade into the horizon. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, casting a warm glow across the cabin, but Jacob's mind was far from settled. He had agreed to help her, but the weight of the task ahead was starting to sink in. Lyra had told him of her people's plight, their desperate search for a way to survive, but she hadn't shared all the details. The device she had shown him, the one she claimed would save her world, was still a mystery. He ran his fingers along the map, tracing the route Lyra had mentioned. It led them deep into the heart of uncharted territory, a place where no human had ventured before, and certainly not alone. The idea of traveling into unknown lands, facing whatever dangers lay ahead, made his stomach churn. But he couldn't back out now, not after seeing the hope in Lyra's eyes. Jacob, Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. She had moved closer, her eyes filled with a quiet intensity. I know this is a lot to ask, but I need you to trust me. You're the only one who can help us. The device, she paused, as if weighing her words carefully. It's not just a tool. It's a key. It unlocks the power to save my people, but it also requires someone who can see beyond what is in front of them. Someone like you. Jacob turned to face her, his brow furrowed. And you think I'm that person? I'm just a guy who spent most of his life hiding out here. Lyra's eyes softened, and for a moment, Jacob saw something else in her. Expression. Not just the determination he had come to expect, but a flicker of vulnerability. You're more than that, Jacob, she said gently. Your compassion, your willingness to help when no one else would. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you the one who can unlock what we need. Jacob stood up, the weight of her words settling in his chest. He had never thought of himself as anything special, just someone trying to make a living in isolation. But now, faced with the possibility of saving an entire world, he began to question everything he thought he knew about himself. All right, he said, his voice steady, though uncertainty still lingered. I'll go with you, but we need to know exactly what we're walking into. Lyra nodded, her silver eyes reflecting the firelight. We'll leave tomorrow. The journey will be difficult, but I believe you're ready. Jacob walked over to the small supply shelf, pulling down a few essentials, a first aid kit, a flashlight, some extra clothes, and began packing them into his bag. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. This was the moment his life would change forever. As he finished packing, Lyra approached him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Thank you, she said quietly. Her touch sent a ripple of warmth through him, and for the first time since she arrived, Jacob felt a sense of purpose settle in his chest. I don't know what will happen next, he replied, turning to face her, but we're in this together now. Let's just make sure we're ready for whatever comes our way. Lyra smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that seemed to light up the room. We will be, she said, her voice filled with conviction. And with that, the two of them sat in silence, the fire slowly dying down as the night wore on, the promise of the journey ahead hanging in the air between them. The following morning, Jacob and Lyra set out from the cabin, their packs strapped securely, filled with supplies for the long journey ahead. The sky above was a muted gray, with the early morning light filtering through the clouds, casting a soft glow on the snow-covered landscape. Jacob glanced at Lyra, who walked beside him with a quiet determination in her step. Her presence, once so foreign and unsettling, now felt strangely comforting. They had been traveling for hours, following the route Lyra had marked on the map. The terrain was rough and unforgiving, with steep hills and thick forests. The cold was relentless, biting through their layers of clothing, but they pressed on, each step bringing them closer to the unknown. Lyra had said little since they left the cabin, lost in her thoughts. Jacob, though exhausted, felt a growing sense of purpose with each passing mile. He had no idea what lay ahead, but there was something in the air, something he could not shake, telling him that this journey was going to change everything. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but Jacob couldn't help but feel like there was something Lyra wasn't telling him, something important. He had seen the way her eyes flickered whenever the device was mentioned, and how her voice grew softer when she spoke of her people. The mystery of it all weighed heavily on him, but for now, he had to trust her. "Lyra," Jacob said, breaking the silence, his voice cutting through the stillness of the forest. "You said that this device, it's the key. What exactly does it do? How does it work?" Lyra slowed her pace, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, Jacob thought she might not answer, but then she spoke, her voice soft and distant. "The device unlocks a power that has been dormant for centuries. My people, we have a history, a great history of peace and prosperity. But that power was lost, hidden away, when we became divided. The device can bring us back together, give us the strength we need to save our world. But it requires a bond, a trust that only someone like you can provide." Jacob's brow furrowed. "A bond? What kind of bond? I don't understand. How can I?" "It's not something I can explain easily," Lyra interrupted, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "The device recognizes something within you. Your ability to understand others, your compassion, your strength. It knows that you are the one who can activate it. But it's not just about the device, Jacob. It's about the connection we have. You have something inside of you that can help us." Jacob didn't know what to say. He felt a sense of responsibility, but also a growing sense of fear. "I don't know if I'm the person you think I am," he admitted. "I'm just trying to do the right thing. But this feels so much bigger than me." Lyra stopped walking, turning to face him. Her silver eyes shone with intensity, but there was a softness there too, a compassion that Jacob hadn't expected. "That's exactly why you're the one who can help," she said quietly. "Because you're willing to question yourself, to doubt your own abilities. It's that humility, that heart, that makes you stronger than anyone else. My people don't have that anymore. We've lost our way, and we need someone who can show us the path again." Jacob looked at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He had always thought of himself as just a regular guy, nothing special. But Lyra saw something in him that he had never seen in himself. And maybe, just maybe, he could be the key to saving her world. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said, his voice firm with determination. "I don't know how, but I'm with you. We'll figure it out." Lyra smiled, her eyes softening with relief. "Thank you, Jacob," she said quietly. "I knew you were the one. Together, we can make it happen." They continued their journey through the forest, the path ahead uncertain, but for the first time since this all began, Jacob felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The future was still a mystery, but he knew that with Lyra by his side, they could face whatever came their way. As the days passed, Jacob and Lyra continued their journey through the wilderness, each step drawing them further from the comfort of the cabin. The landscape changed as they moved deeper into the uncharted territory, with dense forests giving way to jagged mountains and rocky terrain. The weather had been unpredictable, with bursts of harsh winds and sudden snowstorms that slowed their progress. Despite the challenges, Jacob felt a growing sense of purpose. Lyra, though quiet at times, seemed more at ease with each passing day, her confidence in him evident in the way she guided him through the treacherous paths. Jacob had always been self-reliant, But now he was learning to trust Lyra in a way he never thought possible. One evening, as they set up camp for the night, Jacob sat by the fire, his mind occupied with thoughts of the journey ahead. He had been wondering about the device and its true power. Lyra had told him it could unlock something that would save her world, but he still didn't fully understand what that meant. He looked over at her, watching as she prepared their meal, her movements graceful and deliberate. She had been distant at times, her eyes lost in thought, but there was a sense of calm around her now that made Jacob feel more secure in their mission. "Lyra," Jacob called out, breaking the silence. She looked up from the fire, her silver eyes meeting his. "I've been thinking about the device. What exactly does it unlock? I still don't fully get it." Lyra paused, setting down the utensils she had been using, and walked over to sit beside him by the fire. "It's hard to explain," she said quietly, her voice thoughtful. "The device unlocks a dormant energy, a source of power that has been hidden away for centuries. It's tied to the core of my people's existence. When we were at our peak, we had access to this power. But as our society fractured, the energy was sealed away to prevent it from being misused. The device is the key to unlocking it, but it requires someone pure of heart, someone who can see beyond the immediate danger." Jacob listened intently, trying to grasp the significance of her words. "And you think that person is me?" he asked, still unsure. Lyra nodded, her gaze steady. "I do. Your ability to see beyond yourself, your willingness to help others. It's what makes you the one who can unlock the power. But it's not just about the device. It's about understanding what it means to use that power wisely." Jacob thought about her words, his mind racing. He had never considered himself special, but everything Lyra had said made him question what he was capable of. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," he admitted, his voice low. "I've never been a leader, never had to make decisions like this." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "You don't have to be a leader to make a difference, Jacob. You've already shown that by helping me, by trusting me. That's what matters." Jacob looked into her eyes, feeling the weight of her words. He had agreed to help her, but now he realized the true responsibility that came with it. He wasn't just helping a stranger. He was part of something much larger, something that could change the fate of an entire world. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "I'm with you, Lyra. Whatever it takes." She smiled, her expression softening. "Thank you, Jacob. I knew I could count on you." The fire crackled between them, casting flickering shadows on the ground as the night stretched on. Jacob knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There were still many unknowns, many challenges to face. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of purpose that gave him the strength to keep moving forward. With Lyra by his side, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The journey had been long, and the landscape continued to shift in unexpected ways. The further Jacob and Lyra traveled, the more alien the world seemed. The air was thinner at higher altitudes, and the ground beneath their feet was becoming uneven and rocky. It felt like they were crossing into unknown territories, places where even Lyra's people had not ventured in centuries. The map she had showed him seemed to blur into the horizon, making the path ahead feel uncertain, but they pressed on. Lyra, though quiet, had an air of confidence about her. She moved with ease through the changing terrain, as if she had been here before, or perhaps, as if she had always known this would be her path. Jacob, on the other hand, was more cautious, his mind always racing with questions. The device, the one Lyra had entrusted him with, was a constant presence at his side. He still didn't fully understand its significance, but he felt its weight, its promise. Despite the uncertainty, he was starting to believe in Lyra's words, that he could make a difference. One evening, as they set up camp, Jacob noticed how the stars looked different here. The sky above them was clearer, the stars brighter, and the moon seemed closer than it had ever been. He sat near the fire, trying to warm his hands, and glanced over at Lyra, who was standing at the edge of the clearing, staring up at the sky. "Lyra," he called softly, his voice carrying through the still night air. She turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the glow of the fire. "What is it?" "I've been thinking," Jacob said, his voice quieter now, almost hesitant. "I know you're carrying a heavy burden, but I can't help wondering, why me? Why did you choose me to help you?" Lyra's gaze softened as she walked toward him, her footsteps light on the ground. She knelt beside him, her presence calming. "Jacob," she began, her voice gentle but filled with a quiet strength. "It's not just about who you are now. It's about what you could be. Your heart, your ability to trust, your willingness to help. It's what makes you different. My people have lost those qualities. We've become so caught up in the fight for survival that we've forgotten what it means to truly live. You have something that can restore that." Jacob stared into the fire, his thoughts swirling. "I don't know if I can be that person," he admitted. "I don't have the answers. All I know is how to survive." Lyra's hand rested gently on his arm, her touch warm and reassuring. "Survival isn't enough anymore," she said softly. "We need more than that to heal. We need hope. And you've shown me that hope, Jacob. That's why I chose you." Jacob looked at her, the sincerity in her eyes making something stir within him. He had spent so much of his life focusing on getting by, on taking care of himself, that he had never really thought about what it meant to help others in the way Lyra was asking him to. But now, with her words hanging in the air between them, he realized something. He had always been looking for a purpose, something bigger than just surviving. And maybe, just maybe, this was it. "All right," Jacob said after a long pause, his voice steady now. "I'm with you, Lyra. I don't know where this will lead, but I'll help you. We'll figure this out together." Lyra's smile was small, but full of gratitude. "Thank you, Jacob," she said quietly. "That means more than you know." As they sat by the fire that night, the silence between them felt different, richer, more comfortable. Jacob didn't know what the future held, but with Lyra by his side, he felt ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, Jacob felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. The morning light was soft and quiet as it filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the ground. Jacob and Lyra had been walking for days now, the landscape becoming even more alien with every step they took. The rugged, snow-covered mountains they had crossed were now replaced by dense forests filled with strange, towering trees and thick underbrush that was difficult to navigate. Jacob's muscles ached from the constant movement, and the cold seemed to seep into his bones, but he pushed forward. There was no turning back now. Lyra had told him that the device was within reach, that it would lead them to the place where they could unlock its power. The thought of what that power could mean kept him moving, but doubts still lingered in his mind. What exactly was the device supposed to do? How could they be sure it would work? He glanced over at Lyra, who walked beside him, her eyes scanning the forest around them, alert to every sound, every movement. She had been unusually quiet, and Jacob couldn't help but wonder what she was thinking. He could sense the burden she carried, the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Lyra had shared bits and pieces of her world's history, how it had once been a thriving place filled with peace and prosperity, only to fall into chaos. But she hadn't shared everything, and Jacob still felt like there was so much more he didn't know. "Lyra," Jacob called, his voice breaking through the silence. She turned to him, her silver eyes meeting his with a knowing gaze. "Is everything okay? You've been distant for a while now." She paused for a moment, considering her words carefully. "It's nothing," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I'm just focused. We're getting closer to the end, Jacob. Everything we've been working for is within reach." Jacob studied her for a moment, unsure whether to press her further. He could see the determination in her eyes, but there was something else there, something he couldn't quite place. "I don't know how you've kept it together all this time," he said quietly. "I don't know if I could carry the weight of all of this." Lyra smiled faintly, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're stronger than you think, Jacob. You've already proven that." Jacob was silent for a moment, his thoughts drifting back to the journey they had taken together. From the first moment Lyra had knocked on his cabin door, to this moment, he had changed. He had become part of something bigger than himself, and though he didn't know if he was ready for it, he was willing to follow her. "We're almost there, aren't we?" he asked, trying to shift the conversation to something lighter. Lyra nodded, her gaze turning forward. "Yes, we're close. The device will lead us to the place where we can unlock its power. We'll be able to save my people, Jacob. I know it." Jacob looked at her, his heart filled with a mixture of hope and fear. The future seemed uncertain, but one thing was clear. He was in this with her, no matter what. They walked on through the forest, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the thick undergrowth. As they moved deeper into the woods, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. The path ahead was still unclear, but with each step, they were moving closer to the unknown, closer to the truth of what they were meant to do. And for the first time since this journey had begun, Jacob felt a strange sense of peace. Whatever was ahead, he knew they would face it together. The forest was dense and quiet, the only sounds the rustling of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig beneath their feet. Jacob and Lyra had been traveling for days, pushing through the thick woods, the path more treacherous than they had anticipated. The further they ventured, the more Jacob felt the weight of the journey pressing down on him. He had always been self-reliant, but this was different. This was about more than just survival. He had a mission now, something that would change everything. Lyra, too, seemed to carry a heavy burden, but her resolve never wavered. She had led them through each obstacle with a quiet confidence, and Jacob found himself following her without question. There was a determination in her steps, something that made him believe they could actually do this. They had been walking for hours, their destination still not in sight, but Lyra didn't seem concerned. She glanced back at Jacob, her silver eyes reflecting the light of the dimming sky. "We're getting close," she said, her voice calm, but with a sense of urgency. Jacob nodded, though his mind was clouded with uncertainty. "How much further?" he asked, his voice hoarse from the dry air. Lyra hesitated for a moment, her gaze shifting to the horizon. "Not far. The place we're heading to is hidden, but it's where we'll find what we need." Jacob felt a surge of nervous energy. He had no idea what to expect when they arrived, only that it would be pivotal. They had no backup plan, no one else to turn to. It was just the two of them. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," Jacob admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Lyra stopped walking and turned to face him. Her eyes softened, and for the first time in days, Jacob saw something other than the determination that had driven her forward. "You don't have to be ready, Jacob. You just have to be willing," she said, her voice filled with a quiet strength. Jacob met her gaze, feeling the sincerity in her words. There was something about her, something in the way she spoke, that made him believe he could do this. He wasn't alone in this. "I'll do my best," he said, his voice steady now. Lyra smiled, a soft, grateful expression that warmed Jacob's heart. "That's all anyone can ask for," she said. They resumed walking, the air growing colder as they moved deeper into the forest. The trees began to thin out, and ahead of them, Jacob saw a strange, glowing light filtering through the trees. It was faint at first, but as they drew closer, it became brighter, casting an ethereal glow on the ground around them. Jacob's heart skipped a beat. "Is that?" he started, his voice trailing off. Lyra nodded, her expression serious. "Yes, we're almost there." The light grew stronger, illuminating a clearing ahead. As they entered the clearing, Jacob was struck by the sight before him. At the center of the clearing stood a large stone structure, ancient and covered in moss, but with intricate markings glowing softly on its surface. It seemed out of place, a relic of a forgotten time, yet it radiated an energy that felt alive. Lyra walked toward it, her pace measured. "This is it," she said, her voice reverberating with awe. "This is where it all begins." Jacob followed her, his eyes scanning the structure, unsure of what was about to happen. Lyra stopped before the stone and turned to face him. "The device will need to be placed here," she said, holding out the small object that had been their constant companion. Jacob took it from her, feeling its weight in his hands. It was time. The device had led them here, and now it was up to him to unlock its power. He stepped forward, placing the device carefully in the center of the glowing markings. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the markings on the stone began to pulse, and the ground beneath them seemed to hum with energy. Jacob stepped back, his heart racing. He wasn't sure what he expected, but the power in the air was undeniable. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes wide with anticipation. "It's working," she whispered. "It's really happening." Jacob watched in awe as the stone began to shift, the markings glowing brighter and brighter until the entire structure seemed to come alive. The air around them hummed with energy, and Jacob felt a surge of something deep within himself, as though he was connected to this ancient power. And for the first time since this journey had begun, Jacob felt certain. They were on the brink of something incredible. Together, they were about to unlock the fate of her people, and there was no turning back.